Glory, glory, Lord. We give you glory, Lord. Glory, glory, Lord. You are the mighty God. You are the mighty God. Glory, glory, Lord. We give you glory, Lord. Glory, glory, Lord. You are the mighty God. You are the mighty God. You who go down to the sea, you who live in the islands, oh, if you live in the city, lift your voice and sing out. Sing out, glory, glory, Lord. We give you glory, Lord. Glory, glory, Lord. You are the mighty God. You are the mighty God. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing his praise to the ends of the earth. Let every nation tell it, declare it, till every man is heard. Sing out, glory, glory, Lord. We give you glory, Lord. Glory, glory, Lord. You are the mighty God. You are the mighty God. Nani, nani, Jehovah. No kanani, Jehovah. Nani, nani, Jehovah. Keakua manaloa. Via le tua. Matote via ole tua. Via le tua. O le tu mata utia. Glory, glory, Lord. We give you glory, Lord. We give you glory, Lord. We give you glory, Lord. Glory, glory, Lord. You are the mighty God. You are the mighty God. Glory, glory, Lord.
And glory, glory, ye Lord. We give you glory, Lord. May we do that every day of our lives as we come into his presence on a daily basis, and maybe don't wait till Sundays to do it. Well, happy June 15th. We are halfway through the month of June, halfway through the first month of summer, and it's definitely been summer around here in Sherman, Texas, north central Texas, and it's probably going to be that way for a while. It's good to have you aboard today as we journey through one of the more interesting and maybe more emotional, maybe is the word I'm using here, penitential psalms that we find in the entire Psalter. And so as you're turning to the 39th Psalm, and so I would remind you, we only have two more Psalms, Psalm 40 and Psalm 41, until we complete Book 1 of the Psalms. Remember, the Psalms are divided into 5 books, and it is thought that that division of the Psalms into 5 books somewhat resembles or is built off of the 5 books in the Pentateuch, Genesis through Deuteronomy. So when we get to 41, we'll take a break from the Psalms, maybe just a week or two, and then we'll get back to them. But today is a very emotional psalm, and before we look at the overview together today, I want to, again, start with a question. And I wonder just how many people, maybe you're among them, or maybe somebody you know is among them, who would be what you call a silent sufferer. That there are maybe mental health issues that a person is dealing with, and on the outside you would never know it. but inside it is tearing them up. It's traumatic. Of course, depression comes to mind there. Depression is, to some degree, a suffering in silence. And though people who have depression, and I know there's different kinds of depression, they take medication or whatever to help them with that, and maybe on the outside you would never know it. But they're silent sufferers. And maybe there's other ways that people suffer in silence. Perhaps alcoholism is one of those, that unless someone shares with you, and fortunately I've had several people share with me their alcoholism, and then we can put a process together to help them, obviously with the grace and power of God, to overcome that that desperate need in their lives. But many times they suffer in silence. And that appears to be, at least for a moment, what David is doing with some of the very things we've talked about in so many of the Psalms already. The abuse that's coming his way from other people, and what he's feeling about God's discipline in light of his sin. And we think about the sin with Bathsheba and her husband, and yes, that was horrible, but you know, David had other problems too, in particular numbering the people. And so there's many things that come into David's life, but yet he's called a man after God's own heart. And there's no doubt that he loved God, and there's also no doubt that his intimacy with God reveals how David thinks God works. And so, I guess, just let me ask this. If you are a silent sufferer, don't be silent anymore. Seek help. Look for someone who may know where you can get help if that person is not the one who can help you. And let's don't suffer in silence. So we opened our Bibles today to the 39th Psalm, and our overview is that this psalm basically divides itself into 4 parts. The silent suffering part is the first 4 verses. And then verses 4, 5, and 6 talk about the transient life. And we will talk more about that. And just matter of fact, we may talk about that first this morning. And then verses 7 through 11 are an appeal to God for deliverance. And in particular, part of this is an appeal to God for deliverance from the things David believes God is bringing into his life because of his sin. And then the last 2 verses of this psalm are a final appeal for relief. We've seen in some of the other psalms that, you know, David will work his way through the psalm, expressing his plight in life, pleading to God for deliverance, and then it usually ends in a moment of praise and adoration for God, and assurance that God is going to indeed come through like he has in the past. This one doesn't quite end that way. As a matter of fact, the last words of the psalm are, I am no more. And so David's desperation shows through here. So that's, to some degree, how the psalm lays itself out. So let's take a moment and read it together. Psalm 39. The superscription on mine says, to the choir master, to Jeduthun, a psalm of David. And so once again, we are likely looking at a psalm that was sung among the Jews. And this would be one of those songs that would not bring about particular happiness, I guess, but it may be a psalm that's expressing a situation in life that maybe many people among the Jews are dealing with, and there would be some of us who are dealing with it. So maybe we should view it that way as we read it together. Psalm 39, verse 1. I said, I will guard my ways, that I may not sin with my tongue. I will guard my mouth with a muzzle, so long as the wicked are in my presence. I was mute and silent. I held my peace, to no avail. And my distress grew worse. My heart became hot within me. As I mused, the fire burned. Then I spoke with my tongue. O Lord, make me know my end, and what is the measure of my days. Let me know how fleeting I am. Behold, you have made my days a few hands' breadths, and my lifetime is as nothing before you. Surely all mankind stands as a mere breath. Surely a man goes about as a shadow. Surely for nothing they are in turmoil. Man heaps up wealth and does not know who will gather. And now, O Lord, for what do I wait? My hope is in you. Deliver me from all my transgressions. Do not make me the scorn of the fool. I am mute. I do not open my mouth, for it is you who have done it. Remove your stroke from me. I am spent by the hostility of your hand. When you discipline a man, with rebukes for sin, you consume like a moth what is dear to him. Surely all mankind is a mere breath. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Hold not your peace at my tears, for I am a sojourner with you, a guest, like all my fathers. Look away from me that I may smile again before I depart and am no more. Did you hear anything in there that to some degree makes you relate to David? As we mentioned before, maybe you or someone you know is a silent sufferer, and maybe these are some of the very feelings they have toward God if they are a believer. Quite frankly, if they're not a believer in God, I'm not sure what they do. I'm sure there are processes and therapies that are available to them, but if you leave God out, you're leaving out the most potent ingredient in seeking deliverance. David starts this psalm by expressing himself as a silent sufferer. It seems to be that in the face of his oppressors, he's just not going to say anything. And maybe that's a good strategy for us, just to not say anything. I heard of a process years and years ago that was spoken by a counselor. If you want to deal with people who are complaining at you or insulting you, maybe in my case they might say, and probably do, that you're the worst preacher I've ever heard. And the way to respond to that is, we might want to say, well, why do you say that? But he said the best way to respond is to say, yes, that's what some people think, and go on. That's certainly not non-confrontational, and maybe the conversation would move on. So David says that he sits in silence, and he won't let his mouth speak. He's got a muzzle on his mouth as long as the wicked are in his presence. But it says it's to no avail. It didn't stop them. Apparently, in sitting in silence, that they take that as an opportunity to just speak all the more and bring this heartache toward David. And so he says, my heart became hot within me. As I mused, the fire burned, and then I spoke. And so in his silence, things just got worse. And it's the idea of heat and burning. It's just building up inside him. And I think this is a good point for us to stop. If something is hurting inside of us, and I'm not particularly talking physically here, but emotionally and mentally and maybe spiritually, it's not going to be helpful to keep it inside you. And as David's doing here, for one thing, that means you're not seeking help. And for another thing, the way we're built, it's going to explode out of you. And when it explodes, someone is going to be the recipient of that explosion. And so let me encourage you to share with somebody you trust, have confidence in, what's going on inside you, and especially spiritually. I want to start a class here, and I've mentioned it before, that the name of the class is just about 7 question marks, just 7 question marks in a row. That's the name of the class, where we will come together and in a very comfortable and confident environment, we can say what's on our heart about what's troubling us in our faith. So it's going to have a particular spiritual note to it. I will not prepare a class. This will be simply a time of sharing, of people being very transparent about the problems spiritually that they're having in their lives. And I don't know if we can solve those or not, but we can sure pray for them. And that's an opportunity for them just to express what's inside them. And sometimes we need that. And we need it desperately. And David says, I've waited, I've been silent, I've muzzled my mouth, and now I'm going to talk. He expresses a couple of things here in that next section, mostly about how short life is. And it makes me wonder exactly what he's saying here. Yes, life is short. We can read the book of Ecclesiastes, right, and say that. As a matter of fact, David just almost quotes from Ecclesiastes at the end of verse 6, right? Man heaps up wealth and does not know who will gather. And that same thing Solomon says, we work so hard to build our kingdom, and then we're gone, and then who's going to get it, and what are they going to do with it? And so we spend, with respect to eternity, a short time here on this earth, and David says that. But it seems to me that he's beckoning God for an answer to the question, okay, how long am I going to sit in the seat of your discipline on me because of my trespasses? How long is that going to last? Because life is short, and he wants to be able to come out on the other side in a more positive vein in his life. I don't have a problem with David asking that question, and we can ask God that question. How long is there going to be repercussions that we're going to have to deal with in life because of our sin? I've been there and I've asked that question. What I found out is that the penalties, you might say, that we pay for our sin are teaching times. And the word discipline is correct. Discipline, not so much as beating, but discipline more as punishment with teaching. And if we can view the discipline that God brings into our lives because we have been disobedient to him, then we learn better for the next time when perhaps we're tempted or that situation is placed in front of us. Discipline with teaching. So I think that's part of what David is asking here. How long, God, is this going to last in light of the fact that life is so short? Anyway, as a matter of fact, he says twice, does he not? That life is a mere breath, right? He says that at the end of verse 5 and then again at the end of verse 11. In that next section, he seems to be pointing his finger at God. God, this is all you're doing. What's happening to me is coming from you. And you know, he's right, okay? And so he's acknowledging that he sinned and God is bringing indeed the discipline to him. But he does say in verse 7, my hope is in you. As long as he acknowledges that the discipline is from God, then God is his hope to let the time carry out whatever it's going to do and be done. And he acknowledges that. He also acknowledges how difficult the discipline from God can be. You consume like a moth what is dear to him. Have you ever had that happen? You know, Jesus will even say that to the degree of where we lay up our treasures, where moth eats and rust corrupts, that kind of thing, because we're familiar with that. And it can almost feel that way just with life itself. With that final reminder that, okay, life is just a breath. Mankind is just a mere breath. And he goes on to say, when the psalm closes out, that in reality, we're walking with God as visitors or as aliens, your version may say. We're simply guests here, and our host, if we're guests, our host is God. And God is more interested in us having a fulfilling and rewarding and obedient life than he is necessarily having a happy life, the way at least we define happiness. And that's really what David is after, and I hope that's what we're after. But if I can go back to the beginning now as we close, let me just ask, are you a silent sufferer? If you are suffering something, no matter what it is, in silence, that's going to be your biggest roadblock to dealing successfully with whatever you're being silent about, to come out on the other side, to live the rewarding and fulfilling and blessed life that God has for you. Now, having said that, I don't necessarily mean that whatever it is you're dealing with and whatever it is you're not talking about and whatever it is you're keeping to yourself is going to go away. But no longer remaining silent is going to be the first and best step you can take in beginning a positive approach to dealing with it so that it doesn't trip up your whole life. Psalm 39. Different, but I believe it speaks to today especially. Well, as I mentioned, we have 2 more Psalms before the book 1 of the Psalms is over. So we'll do 40 this week, 41 next week. Stay cool out there, okay? Be sure you're drinking enough water. Either stay in where there's air conditioned or find some shade if you're outside. And have a bottle of water with you when you're outside to stay hydrated and stay healthy. God bless you all. I love you, and we will see you next week.
Lord, we give you glory, Lord. Glory, glory, Lord. You are the mighty God.